Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we have an important and powerful story to share with you. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's dive into this emotional journey that highlights the resilience and strength in the face of adversity. In life, there are moments that change us, moments that burn deep into our souls and shape who we become. For her, those moments came almost every day. Quiet, seemingly insignificant encounters that accumulated over time, each one another layer of the heavy burden she carried. But her journey began long before those daily struggles. Growing up in a small town, she had always known she was different. Her mother had told her stories of their ancestors, of their strength, their fight to survive in a world that never seemed to want them. But knowing their strength didn't make her reality any easier to bear. As a little girl, she would often come home from school crying, wondering why she was always the one teased, always the one left out. Her mother would hug her, tell her to stand tall, tell her that one day the world would see her for who she really was. But as the years went on, the weight of those words grew harder and harder to carry. By the time she was in her 20s, she had learned how to put on the armor that Black women often have to wear in this world. She had learned how to smile through the pain, how to keep her head up even when her heart was heavy. But sometimes, that armor wasn't enough. One of those moments came at a coffee shop. It was a rainy afternoon. She had just finished a long workout at the gym and was craving her usual latte. As she stood in line, she noticed the way the barista, a young white man with blonde hair and a bored expression, barely glanced at her as he took her order. He didn't smile, didn't engage in the friendly banter she heard him exchange with the white customers in front of her. After placing her order, she moved to the side to wait. But something strange started happening. As more customers came in, she noticed that everyone else was getting their coffee before her. People who had come in after her were walking out with their drinks in hand, while she stood there, ignored, invisible. She waited, telling herself that maybe there was a mix-up, maybe they had forgotten her order. But as more time passed, it became clear that something else was going on. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes, she approached the counter. "Excuse me, I've been waiting for my order. Is it ready?" she asked, her voice calm but with an edge of frustration. The barista barely looked at her. "It'll be ready when it's ready," he said dismissively, turning away before she could respond. That familiar feeling of anger and humiliation welled up inside her, but she swallowed it down. She didn't want to cause a scene, didn't want to be the angry Black woman. She waited a few more minutes, and when her drink finally came, it was cold. No apology, no acknowledgement of the wait. Just cold coffee and a bitter taste in her mouth. Then there was the incident at the clothing store. She and her best friend, another Black woman, had decided to treat themselves to a shopping spree at a high-end boutique downtown. It was supposed to be a day of fun, of laughter, of celebrating their hard work. But as soon as they walked into the store, they felt the eyes on them. The security guard, a tall white man with a stern expression, stood by the door, watching their every move. As they browsed the racks of expensive clothes, they could feel the weight of his gaze. He wasn't watching the other customers, mostly white women in designer handbags and sunglasses. Just them. After a few minutes, the store manager, a thin white woman with short blonde hair and a tight smile, approached them. "Can I help you find something?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "No thanks, just browsing," her friend replied, her tone polite but firm. But the manager didn't leave. She hovered nearby, pretending to straighten clothes on the racks. But it was clear what she was doing. She was watching them, waiting for them to make a wrong move. It was infuriating. They were two successful women, out to enjoy a day of shopping, but to the store employees, they were nothing more than potential thieves. They tried to ignore it, tried to keep their heads high, but the experience left a sour taste in their mouths. After about 15 minutes, they walked out, not because they had found what they were looking for, but because they couldn't stand the feeling of being treated like criminals. Another day, another moment of quiet humiliation. This time, it happened at the park. It was a warm summer evening, and she had decided to take a book and sit on a bench, enjoying the peacefulness of the evening air. As she read, she noticed a white woman walking her dog nearby. The woman kept glancing at her, her expression a mix of suspicion and discomfort. After a few minutes, the woman circled back, this time sitting on a bench a few feet away. She pulled out her phone, casting furtive glances in her direction. Not long after, a park officer, a white man in a green uniform, approached her. "Ma'am, we received a call about some suspicious activity in the area. Just wanted to check in, see what you're doing here," he said, his tone polite but firm. She stared at him, her book still open in her lap. "Suspicious activity," she repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. "I'm sitting on a bench, reading a book." The officer nodded, but his eyes were still full of suspicion. "Just doing my job, ma'am," he said before walking away. She watched him go, the white woman still sitting nearby, her eyes downcast but satisfied. Once again, she was reminded that, to some people, her very existence was a threat. But these weren't the moments that defined her. No, her story didn't end with those quiet moments of racism. Her story was about rising above it, about finding her voice, her strength, and using it to change the world. Years later, she stood in front of a packed auditorium, her natural curls styled elegantly, a tailored suit hugging her powerful frame. She was no longer the invisible woman at the coffee shop, the suspect at the park, the watched customer at the boutique. She was now a renowned public speaker, an activist for racial justice, and an inspiration to people around the world. As she stood on that stage, looking out at the sea of faces, she felt a sense of peace. The pain of her past hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed. It had become her fuel, her motivation to keep fighting, to keep pushing for a better world. This wasn't the first time she had spoken to a crowd, but tonight felt different. As she began her speech, the audience hung on her every word, captivated by her calm yet powerful presence. She shared stories of her life, stories of the subtle and overt racism she had faced, but also stories of triumph, of moments when she had refused to let the world define her. "Let me tell you about the time I was invisible," she began, her voice echoing through the auditorium. She recounted the coffee shop incident, the boutique, the park, each one a reminder of how far she had come. By the time she finished, the audience was on their feet, clapping, cheering, not just for her, but for every black woman who had ever felt invisible, every person who had ever been judged by the color of their skin. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope this story has resonated with you and inspired you in some way. If it did, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. Let's continue to raise awareness, support each other, and fight against the injustices in our world. See you in the next video.